I certainly think that many Trump supporters are getting a bit cocky in this election, absolutely convinced they are going to win again. Trump can't lose. And there are some metrics that suggest Donald Trump is going to win, notably the poll from Gallup showing 55% of people say they are better off now than they were 4 years ago, which is higher than Obama when he was facing re-election or when he was running for re-election. So people are happy. Things are going great. But the polls, however, are signaling a Joe Biden victory. But the polls don't matter. And I think the polls are wrong because early voter turnout and data suggests that Democrats are underperforming. In fact, as of right now, and this will change, Republicans are winning Ohio in early voting and mail voting when Democrats are projected to have the advantage. To put it simply, everyone thought, all the pundits said, Democrats are going to lead in early voting and mail-in voting. Well, that's not true in Ohio. And in many other key battleground states, Republicans are losing. Keep that in mind. But the gap is much smaller than people predicted, suggesting Donald Trump might actually win. Republicans might actually win. Now, the betting markets aren't so convinced, but there's actually a lot of data here. You see, Joe Biden may be leading in Pennsylvania. That's true. And Democrat turnout right now is dramatically crushing Republican turnout in early voting. But registration in Pennsylvania is now R+. There are more Republicans registered in Pennsylvania than Democrats, suggesting among all of these other states, Trump might be on track to win. Now, I'm not going to put any hard predictions. I'm leaning towards I think Trump is going to win, but I'm not entirely convinced. But I'll tell you what, Joe Biden voters and Democrats also feel like Donald Trump is going to win. Now, in many of these polls, the majority of people say, even though they don't support Trump, Trump is going to win. Even though more people say they'll vote for Biden, they still feel Trump is going to win. And now we have this from the Washington Post. Biden leads Trump, so did Hillary Clinton. For Democrats, it's worrisome campaign deja vu. Oh, I got all the numbers, baby. Now, look. This could be wishful thinking. You come to my channel and it's going to be, oh, Trump is on track. Oh, this is good news for Republicans. I know, right? This channel, my views are biased, but I'll tell you why. Every single thing I read from most of these polling outlets say Democrats are going to win. Here's why. Democrats are winning. Here's why. Joe Biden's leading. Trump can't possibly win. And then every so often you'll see tidbits about why Trump might win. So I'm not going to sit here and say, oh, look at all this data. Here's why the Democrats are going to win, because that's all the media says. Perhaps it's true. Democrats are going to win. Joe Biden is leading in the polls. But let me present to you my perspective on why it may be Trump who is going to win. We don't know. We don't. But I think the arguments need to be entertained, and this one feels underserved. However, stories are popping up showing Democrats is getting worried. We have the story from the Washington Post, but before we read it, head over to timcast.com/donate if you would like to support my work. There are many ways you can give. There is a P.O. box if you'd like to send me stuff, but the best thing you can do, share this video. I've been saying it a lot in this past couple of weeks. We are 2 weeks out from an election, and this channel you are watching right now has been blacklisted on Google. No joke. You cannot Google search this video. It will not come up. Now, call that whatever you want, election interference, political interference, sure, fine. Google doesn't want you to see this. Google doesn't want Trump supporters to know there is good reason to believe Republicans might actually win. They want you demoralized. They want people to think it's going to be Joe Biden. That's not necessarily true. We don't know, but I've got some good reason to suggest Trump is on track for a victory as of right now, and things could change. But for whatever reason, this channel is censored, is less relevant than if you want people to know this and you think I do a good job, please share this. Otherwise, they're not going to hear it. But also don't forget to like, subscribe to the notification bell, and let's read the story. From the Washington Post, Biden leads Trump, so did Hillary Clinton. For Democrats, it's a worrisome campaign deja vu. The polls are once again delivering feel-good boosts to Democrats. Joe Biden beats President Trump by 10, 11, or 12 points nationally, depending on the day. His edge in Michigan, Pennsylvania, and Wisconsin averages 8. Propeller heads promised better than 4 and 5 odds of a new president next year. But the partisans remember they have been here before. 4 years ago this week, the conflicting emotions can be overwhelming. Quote, I am feeling anxious and trapped between a sense of unbridled optimism and sheer dread, said Abington Township PA Commissioner Bill Bohl, who, like many Democrats, never thought Trump could beat Hillary in 2016 and was stunned when he did. It's really tough to live in this sort of bifurcated state of watching the polls and trying to glean trends from them, but also not really incorporate them into your thinking. Bull is not alone. Democrats went to the polls last time certain they would elect the first woman ever to become president and were punched in the face with a Trump upset. This time they feel the punch coming from 1,000 miles away. The worry is visceral and widespread, unassuaged by Biden's lead in the polls. Because of what happened to us in 2016, folks still remain cautious, said Michigan Democratic Party Chair Lavora Barnes. Nobody is taking anything for granted, even the folks that we're meeting at doors and talking to on phones. With the benefit of hindsight, even the most partisan tacticians caution that the election results remain unknown. Polling, which has consistently shown Biden well ahead and en route to winning the Electoral College, is but a snapshot with a built-in margin of error that can go either way or not at all. Voting may have begun, but there are still weeks to go, and voters have changed their minds before. Quote, I don't know anyone in my Democratic pollster world who is sitting 100% comfortably or anything like that, said Nick Gorovich, a partner at Global Strategy Group, who has been polling on the presidential race. Biden seems in better shape, but it is still a polarized country, and a Trump win is still within the realm of possibility. The uncertainty has become a point of leverage for Trump, who has always dismissed polls that reflect badly on him as fake efforts to suppress his voters. It has become a rallying cry for Democrats who have been warning the country and their own voters against complacency. Now, here's where it gets funny. Privately, Trump's advisors are less bullish, saying that he's behind, but they're going to close this gap. They won't broadcast anything short of uncertainty. Anything short of certainty. The mainstream news media has spent the last 4 years trying to destroy and defeat President Trump, so why would anyone put faith in polling paid for by these same organizations? Tim Murtaugh said, the president is going to be reelected. On the Biden side, the creeping sense of deja vu has become a dominant feeling. Quote, the thing is, people don't react logically. They react emotionally to this, said Ed Rendell, the former Pennsylvania governor and a top Biden surrogate, who has been trying to calm nervous Democrats by pointing to the better polling, lack of a strong third-party candidate, and some promising early voting figures when compared with 4 years ago. And emotionally, you see the same scenario developing all over again. Now, let's stop there. Promising early voting figures. Is that true? No, it's not. The early voting figures are bad for Democrats. They're underperforming. It doesn't mean they're going to lose. It does suggest the polls are wrong. Joe Biden's campaign put out a memo saying the polls are wrong. They're inflated. But let me show you. We got the news. First, from Frank Luntz, who is quoting this story or tweeting out, Biden enters the final weeks with a lead in Pennsylvania that is actually slightly narrower than it was for Clinton 3 weeks before the 2016 election. The Real Clear Politics average. Hillary Clinton had a 5.2% average lead over Trump. Joe Biden, 3.8. So who's going to win? Well, look, demographics have changed. We don't know what this means. I'll tell you this. It doesn't mean the polls are right. It could mean they're worse. We just don't know. And for all these people betting Biden's going to win and putting money on it, y'all are crazy. You want to know why the right bet right now is Donald Trump? Because Trump has the odds against him. And that means it's a toss-up. We have no idea who's going to win. So bet on Trump because at least he'll get a better payout if he does. But we really don't. It's a 50-50 play. But check this out. Poll Watch 2020 breaks it down. And there's a lot to break down. But check this out. Pennsylvania voter registration, Dem to Republican gap. In 2008, Democrats' advantage over Republicans was 1.2 million, and Obama won by 600,000. In 2012, the Democrat advantage was 1.1 million, and Obama won by 300,000, getting his win, his margin cut in half. In 2016, the Democrat advantage over Republicans was 916,000, and Trump won by 44,000. Today, as of yesterday, the Democrat advantage, 700,000. What will the result be? They say, two things to note about Democrat-Republican voter gap in PA. The gap decreased by 535,000 since 2008. The D to Republican gap decreased by 215,000 since 2016, with Republicans up 205,000 to Democrats being down 10,000. So let me clarify. Maybe I got the earlier thing wrong in the beginning when I said the Republican advantage. What I mean is Republicans have gained 200,000 and Democrats have declined. Democrats are going down. Republicans are going up. The D to R gap decreased by 16,000 in 2 weeks since October 5th. It's weird. I love this. Check it out. Poll Watch says, it's weird that we put up registration data and most discussion is about election interference. Why? Because the Democrats are freaking out. They can't explain why they're losing voters. I can. You got leftists calling for abolishing the Constitution. Yeah, that's crazy. That's really crazy. You've got critical race theory. People don't want to play those games. But instead of addressing the fact they're bleeding voters and Republicans are making huge gains, they just say, it's interference. It's voter suppression, they say. One person asks, is registration over? Yes, registration is over. This data suggests that Donald Trump will carry Pennsylvania. We don't know. Democrats have some good data on their side, however. Early voting right now and mail-in voting is ridiculously in favor of Democrats. I think it's like 40 points or something. It's nuts. I'll pull up the data. But check this out. Republicans are freaking out now. They're not freaking out. Not like the Democrats are. But Republicans are angry. Supreme Court rules Pennsylvania can count ballots received after Election Day. Republicans are saying this is them cheating. They're going to get late ballots. They're going to count them and the Democrats are going to win. I don't think so. And I think it's because, well, Nate Silver lays it out, actually. Let's take the word of Nate Silver. He says, this seems important to keep in mind when considering the impact of court rulings over when ballots arrive. Only about 1% of mail ballots arrived after Election Day in the PA primaries. Could that have an impact in a close election? Sure, in a very close election. But it's also not clear that late arriving mail ballots would be especially Democratic, given that Ds are sending in the ballots sooner than Republicans. Wait, hold on. Democrats are sending in all of their ballots early. That means late votes may actually lean Republican. Yeah, this ruling may have just helped Republicans. So while everybody is yelling at Chief Justice John Roberts, who's supposed to be conservative but sided with the liberals, giving a 4-4 tie, nullifying or basically giving the lower court's ruling precedent or letting the lower court ruling stand, Republicans are mad about this. They should be happy. This could turn out to greatly benefit Republicans. Republicans eke out Democrats in turnout on first day of Florida's early voting. This should absolutely be scaring the Democrats. Check this out. More registered Republicans than Democrats turned out to vote on the first day of early voting in Florida, according to data reviewed by the Washington Post. The difference wasn't huge. It was about 1 point. Still, turnout on the first day of early voting in the critical swing state was up nearly 17% compared to 4 years ago, when roughly 290,000 cast ballots, the Florida Department of State reported. President Trump and the Democratic nominee Joe Biden are hotly contesting the state, blah, blah, blah. I think Trump's going to win Florida. I'm sorry, man. I see these parades, Latinos for Trump. It really does seem like Trump's going to win Florida. Now, I kind of got ahead of myself. I want to show you this. As we now get into what the betting markets are saying and the fact that Trump is actually winning as of right now in Ohio, which would be crazy, I want to highlight this thread from Nate Silver he just brought up a moment ago. I just brought up a moment ago from Nate Silver. He says, so far returned ballots are D plus 31. Not a surprise given what polls show. Whereas the set of mail ballots that have been requested but not yet returned are only D plus 17. If, as the data shows, Dems are returning their ballots sooner, then mail ballots cast closer to Election Day, which in many states will also be counted later, may not be as Democratic as mail ballots overall. Suffice it to say, Republicans are expected to turn out in massive droves on Election Day. And that's going to hurt Democrats. Election Day is all for Republicans, which means Democrats need huge advantages right now. We need to see them winning right now because according to the latest data from Nate Silver, it would suggest later ballots will not help Democrats. That's what everybody was saying, remember? That Trump will win on election night, but then late arriving Democrat ballots will flip it for Joe Biden. Well, the data right now suggests otherwise. It suggests that It's not going so well for Democrats, and they need the biggest turnout possible right now. Remember those numbers. D plus 31 and D plus 17. First, the prediction market over at PredictIt. Which party will win the Electoral College? They say Joe Biden, 65 cents per share, and Trump only 40. And they're showing. Most people think Pennsylvania is going blue. Florida is going blue. Michigan, Wisconsin, and Minnesota going blue. I'm not entirely convinced. I think these people are making dumb bets based off of polls that are probably wrong. Well, we also have, I believe, I got to show you this. Keep this in mind. PredictIt. 2016. Who will win? Donald Trump or Hillary Clinton? You see, just before Election Day, Trump on November 7th was trading shares at 22 cents, meaning about 22%. And Hillary Clinton, 82. And then Election Day happened. And Hillary Clinton dropped in one day to 1 cent. That's how PredictIt works. They're basically betting shares. Look at this flip, though. Trump, everybody knows this, right? So if you're looking at these polls right now and they're saying Trump's going to lose, this is why the Democrats are freaking out. None of them are convinced the polls will be correct. They think they're going to lose. And guess what? I brought the data. Check out Ohio. Nate Silver says Democrats are D plus 31. They're returning their ballots way more. Democrats are supposed to have the advantage right now. Early voting is favoring Democrats. Nate Silver says late counted ballots might not actually be Democrat and might lean Republican. Here you go. In 2020, as of right now, with 22.8% of total votes cast, Republicans lead with 45.2 to Democrats 42.3. Republicans have a nearly 3-point advantage in Ohio. Unaffiliated voters are up slightly from the last election at 12.5. We don't know exactly where the unaffiliated voters are going. If they slightly lean Democratic, it's still good news for Republicans because they're only about a quarter the size of both voting blocks. So they're not likely going to swing either side. Republicans have the advantage. Now, I want to show you a bunch of other states, though. So we have Michigan here. The other day, I did a segment on this showing that Michigan was actually in favor of Trump. Things change. Trump did a rally where he said, did you hear this? We're actually winning in Michigan. Well, Democrats came out, and as of right now, 32.4%. I'm sorry, I got to clarify what I said last time. 32.4% of the total votes counted statewide in the 2016 general election. Voter turnout is ridiculously high right now. It's going to be historic, my understanding. Well, right now, the Democrats have just about they have a 6.4% advantage over Republicans. It's good for Democrats they're winning. It's bad because their winning margins right now are really low, suggesting when in-person voting starts on Election Day, it's going to be totally Republican. It's going to be absolutely huge. And I think the Republicans will probably win. But let's take a look at some other states. Wisconsin, for instance. In Wisconsin, Democrats are up 10 points, which is really good for Democrats, but not nearly the 31 or 17. We don't really know for sure, but it is interesting that unaffiliated voters are turning out in higher numbers. This is important when you consider that not every state has a registration advantage for Republicans. The Democrats are a bigger political party in this country. If unaffiliated voters are turning out and they're voting Republican, it may actually be bad for Democrats. But going off of the hard numbers, unaffiliated voters, independent voters tend to vote Democrat more. So with a large 23% of the votes being unaffiliated, it's bad news for Republicans across the board. Arizona, there is about a 9-point advantage for Democrats. Look, all of this data, we have Minnesota looking bad for Republicans, a 20-point edge for Democrats. And then I think we have Pennsylvania is really, really bad, a 40-point advantage for Democrats. That's apocalyptic for Republicans. But that's why I showed you voter registration in Pennsylvania, showing Republicans gaining massively and the Democrat advantage dropping. I can't explain why early voter and absentee turnout for Republicans is so low other than they don't trust the process. It could be they trust Donald Trump. Think about that. Donald Trump said vote in person, don't trust the mail-in votes. So many Republicans, probably believing Trump, did not turn out and aren't going to vote. Now, the actual hard numbers, 2020, we have 603,000 votes for Democrat, 221,000 for Republican. But keep in mind, this is massively higher than 2018, where it was 31,000 for Democrats and 36,000 for Republican. But in the last election, in the midterm, Republicans turned out 7 points higher than Democrats. So right now, things aren't looking too good for them. I have to stress, however, I want to show this to be fair. And I will stress again, we really don't know what's going to happen. But voter registration for Republicans in Pennsylvania is just way too good to pass up. I think Democrats have a real reason to be worried. They are losing their advantage in key states. They've lost it. That suggests Republicans are actually gaining, are actually winning. Now, over in the national vote, the other day we saw Nate Silver say 17. Well, as of right now, it's 14. The Democrat advantage has gone down. If early voting favors Democrats, and on election days when the Republicans actually come out to vote, nationally, it looks like bad news for Democrats. It really does. But again, I can go through all this data. We can talk about it. It's hard to know exactly what we're going to see. I want to highlight one of these political poll tweets, however. Georgia Senate poll. Perdue, the incumbent, is at 46 to Ossoff's 45. One person responded saying Emerson has an A- grade from 538 with a 0.3 mean reverted bias towards Democrats. One person said with shy Republican voters, Ossoff is up 1 or 2 points. I don't know what that means. I just thought it was interesting considering a lot of people in the media were saying Perdue was going to lose because his rival raised a ton of money. Moving on to the last few points I want to make. I have good news for conservatives. Something that Eric Weinstein calls incons. Incons. Involuntary conservatives. This may be the surprising Trump winning factor. What's an incon? Well, right now we're seeing a large turnout of unaffiliated voters in certain states, Minnesota, Wisconsin. Now, like I said, they typically vote Democrat. But check this out. Weinstein says involuntary conservatives are real. As I've told you, the failure to condemn Mayor Jenny and Ted Wheeler, acknowledge Antifa, admit to media bias, or to level about cognitive issues in a near octogenarian has created the never Trump voter. Yep. And this is a response to a tweet from James Lindsay. I covered this on my 1 p.m. segment. For those listening to the podcast, you'll hear it in a second. He says, frankly, going to unhappily vote Republican, including Trump, until the left walks this S all the way back. It's an article calling for abolishing the Constitution. Yes, you heard me. Abolishing the Constitution. James Lindsay responds to Eric Weinstein saying, you only get to gaslight people while slamming on the radical accelerator for so long. Involuntary conservative. I don't consider myself to be conservative at all, but I understand what Eric is saying. There's going to be a lot of people who don't want to vote Republican, who don't feel Republican, but you bet they're going to vote Republican. And we may be seeing that right now. If we factor in the research I've highlighted several times, 10% of Trump voters will lie about it. Stands to reason in all of these states where the gap is less than 10%, Democrats are losing. And the unaffiliated voter is swinging Republican. I don't know for sure. It could be wishful thinking. It could be an attempt to just justify why Trump isn't out of the game. But I'll throw it to Ian Bremmer. Percent of Americans saying they're better off now than they were 4 years ago. September 2020 under Trump, 55%. December 2012, Obama, 45%. Obama won re-election. In 2004, when Bush won re-election, 47%. Bush in 1992, he lost 38%. Reagan, 44%. Gallup polls. This may be, as some have said, the only poll that matters. Life's good for a lot of people. They're better off now than 4 years ago under Trump. Trump did that. And if you don't recognize that and you think Trump's going to lose, I think you're crazy. But you also need to consider, if you're a Trump supporter or a Biden supporter, whatever, consider this. Trump derangement vote. I mean, there are people who don't care about politics at all who are screaming into their phones, wake up! Have you seen those videos? They don't know anything about politics, and they're going to vote against Trump. Political polls with one of the more significant updates. The total Trump votes cast in Texas in 2016 was 4.6 million. The total 2020 votes cast in Texas as of last night, 4.7. The total votes cast in early voting in Texas is higher the number of votes Trump got in 2016. Go vote. This is your, you got to do it. You got to go out and vote. Do not think you can sit back. The Hillary Clinton voters and Democrats who thought they won so they didn't vote are coming out in force. Young voters who are looking to get that viral meme are going to go out and vote and do stupid songs about it. And Trump supporters will crawl over broken glass to slam down that lever for Donald Trump. You better go vote. Now, as for the rest of us who have been dragged in and don't want to be political and just want it all to stop, you hear these Democrats saying, don't you want it all to go away? Just give us the power and we'll stop beating you over the head. I'm not buying it. You give Joe Biden the power and he will drop to bended knee for Antifa and say, please, sir, tell me what to do. I just want power. There is hope for those of us who want to go back to watching, shows, TV shows. I mean, Game of Thrones didn't really end well and Westworld kind of went nuts. But The Boys, that's a pretty good show. I like The Boys. Well, we'll never get those days back. I'm sorry. There is no going back to the days of old. There is no reversing the clock on everything that's happened. The culture war will not stop. The people who think voting for Biden will bring back the days of old are wrong. But there is hope. There is. Neil deGrasse Tyson warns asteroid could hit Earth before Election Day. The day before. Oh, there it is. Sweet meteor of death. Coming just the day before election. Wiping everybody out. Put us out of our misery. I'm kidding, by the way. Asteroid, it's not going to hit the Earth. But I thought it was funny anyway. Look. From now until Election Day, you are going to hear me saying, play-by-plays. It's going to be like watching sports. I'm going to be like, and the swing goes to Democrats. Pennsylvania taking a sharp turn. Democrats now in the lead. Can they make it to the finish line? I imagine most of my videos are going to be like, whoa, look at this data. What's happening as we speculate and try and figure out what's going on. And then election night, we'll see who actually wins. Next segment will be coming up at 6 p.m. over at youtube.com/TimCastNews, a channel that is also blacklisted on Google. So please consider sharing this content, subscribing. Otherwise, you will never see me again. But I will see you at 6 p.m. in the next segment. Thanks for hanging out. I'll check you. I'll see you there.